don't ask you anything about your mindset. They don't ask you anything about your lifestyle. They don't ask you anything about your history, like actual emotional history.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, yeah, you should take this pill. That will mask the symptom.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Evolving with Jessica podcast. My name is Jessica. I am an integrative nutrition health coach, a holistic skin healing guide, and certified life coach. In this podcast, we cover topics such as holistic health and wellness, nutrition, and spirituality. If you enjoy or gain any insight, please leave a review. This makes the show more searchable, which helps others find the information too. In this episode, I joined Teamo, a holistic health and self-mastery coach, for an Instagram Live. So yes, this episode was an IG Live, but it received such great feedback from the ones who attended live that I wanted more people to have access to it. Be sure to check out Teamo's Instagram at teamo.franco, which is also linked in the description. Here's what you can expect to hear in this conversation. We share our experiences with our health and how we became more rooted on the true meaning of health and what that looks like. We talk about resolving root causes versus band-aid fixes. We bring awareness to what goes on in the body while healing and how interconnected everything is. And while discussing all of this, I believe we give some tangible advice on action steps that can be done to move you closer to optimal health. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a like, and to make sure that you don't miss any new episodes, be sure to subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave any questions in the comments and I will answer them there. Lastly, if you are struggling with your skin, whether it's acne, eczema, cystic acne, rosacea, I have free resources available for you in the description, so be sure to download those. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation with my friend Teamo.
So I've just been introducing. Today we are talking about holistic health, healing inside and outside, root cause healing, and also it's going to be talking about mindset and some other aspects of that.
Wonderful.
Cool. Just adjusting my tripod. You saying? So Jessica, what do you do? Why are you passionate about what you do?
Oh, I help women feel beautiful and confident in their own body and in their own skin. And I work with women who are struggling with skin conditions. So whether that's acne, eczema, rosacea, cystic acne, those are the main core issues that I see with the women I work with. So women that have these skin conditions and they don't feel secure, they don't feel confident, they don't feel beautiful, they're not living life to the fullest, they're not enjoying their day-to-day life, they're not doing the things that they want to do. So I work with them and help them clear their skin from the inside out. And I'm so passionate about it because I was there. I had such severe skin issues. And if you have not seen my pictures, they're all over my profile, so you can see for yourself how severe it was. And I was able to heal naturally. But when I did it all on my own. There was no resource that I could find of something or someone to help me. So I kind of became what I needed at that time, and now I help others who want to heal naturally, but they don't know how.
Very good. So talking about skin there, what's your favorite skincare routine? Do you have something special that helped you to change that?
So in the beginning, I wanted the quick fix. I wanted something that was obviously going to take it away as quickly and painlessly as possible. So I was looking at all these different creams and potions and pills and topical treatments that made all these promises that were supposed to be the cure. And I tried everything you can think of, anything that you read about online. I tried it, whether it's something like proactive that targets acne or something high end like Lancome. Went to dermatologists. They want you to try like Cetaphil. So I tried all these different things, and it just eventually you kind of realize that if you treat it topically, you're not treating the root cause. So it's not actually going to heal. And so I got to this point where I did nothing. I used absolutely nothing on my face topically. Water was the only thing, and I just healed from the root cause. And yeah, so when people ask me about topical treatments or what I use on my skin, it's the last thing I want to do, because I want to start at the inside and work our way out. So then the problem is solved for good. It doesn't come back. You don't have to worry about treating it every other week. So yeah, that's the way I look at it as far as topically and working your way from the inside, and then we address this actual skin last.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like a big shift in mindset from kind of like looking from like more of like a pharmaceutical approach to things, like what things can I add to be able to change versus like what things can I remove or change in order to be able to create change.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and so what was the real big pivotal moment that kind of shifted everything for you?
I would say realizing that a lot of the things that I was doing was making it worse. So a lot of the things that I was putting on my skin, or the things that I was doing that I thought were healthy, but they weren't. And I knew that because it was not helping. So initially I was just like flailing. Like if you just like picture someone drowning, and like I'm just like anyone that would throw me something to hold on to, I would grab it. And it might be something that would pull me under the water deeper. But like I didn't care. Like I just was grasping at anything. So I was taking advice from literally anyone, even if they never dealt with skin issues. Because like if they just read something online and they would tell me, oh, I saw this, try this, I would do it. And yeah, so it kind of it dawned on me that I needed to be more in tune with myself and my body, and listen to what it wanted. And instead of like looking out there for the solution, like knowing that I had it, but I needed to tune in and get to know myself. I feel like that's such a huge thing too, with whether it's skin or any type of physical ailment or struggle that someone's going through. It's an opportunity, and I think it's a lesson for that person to learn to go inward and to get to know themselves, and to learn like who they are, and learn self-love and self-trust, because it when it comes down to it, that's the only option left. So it forces the person to do that. But it's so beautiful, because from the outside it's like, oh, you poor thing, but no, it's really like it's the best thing that could happen to
Yeah, for sure. Um, it's there's this concept of the pain teacher,
you.
where all of the struggles that we go through are these lessons that are made apparent for us to be able to then learn from. And it's so true, like it's not always as quick as in a maths lesson where it's like, what's the answer to this, and you get the answer from the lesson. But
Mhm.
it is through that like human experience of looking for the answers, looking outside of yourself for the answers, and then actually coming to the realization that you have to be able to interpret what your body is saying, what the system is saying, rather than just what the symptoms are. And those symptoms are kind of like clues as to what's going on. But
Mhm.
if we, and this, like you said, it happens so much in skin health, in physical health, and in just the environment of modern medicine, that everything, there's a pill that you can take for it. And I saw something the other day, which was the patient goes, it's a comedy sketch, and the patient goes to a doctor, and they're like, "Oh, I've got this thing going on." So the doctor's like, "Yes, you're deficient in this pill. Yeah, you need to be taking this."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I see this a lot, especially in the health and fitness industry, where obviously people can they want results from their training. So for example, getting stronger or building muscle mass, or those are the kind of like very entry level points for people to focus on in the health and fitness industry. And I think it, having been at that point of like, oh, I want to do these things, and then realizing all of the other stuff which is, you know, related to being healthy and being in a state of growth, um it's really interesting. Because on the topic of skin, one of the things you're saying is, I've been through this myself with all these different like products and stuff, and I have to put this thing on and exfoliate like this, and then add this thing, and then do that thing. But simultaneously, then I was just going like and eating junk food, and then dealing with like high stress situations and not knowing how to regulate my nervous system, and all of these different things contributing to toxins in my system that my body is just clearing through pathways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so in terms of that, coming into an internalization of recognizing like what's going on inside of us that could be creating the metaphorical redness, or needing clearance out of the system, what are some of the things that you found within yourself that you were needing to change or to adjust in order to be able to create better overall health and skin health?
Yeah, that's a great question because, like you said, it's not just one thing, and you have all these other factors that come into play that you have to look at individually. Like, am I stressed out? Is my nervous system regulated? Because if it's not, you can be doing everything else perfectly. Like, you could have the cleanest diet on the planet, you could have the cleanest skincare and everything else. Um, but if you're stressed, and a lot of people don't even know it, and I can speak to this because I went through this personally, and I've worked with women who don't even realize that their nervous system isn't regulated. But what happens is you get so stressed out about your physical symptoms or appearance that you're constantly thinking about it. It's like playing in the back of your mind, and it's been going on so long you don't even realize it.
Mm.
And you need to get out of your mind and into your body more. Like, you need to step away from it and focus on something else. So yeah, for me, like you were saying, diet, I thought I was eating very healthy, very clean. Most of my life I have. And some of these foods I'm about to say are considered very healthy to a lot of people, but they were not serving me at the time. It wasn't the diet that I needed to heal my skin. So I would start the day with avocado toast on Ezekiel bread with bee pollen. So you might think that's some healthy foods. And then, like, for dinner, I would have a big salad with salmon. During the day, I would have like a protein bar that would have nuts in it. And there were certain things in there. I'm not saying any of those foods are bad, but there were certain foods that were making my skin worse that maybe for other people it wouldn't make their skin worse. So
Mm.
another part is like, it's very bio individual. There are specific foods that will work against your healing for everyone, like pretty much all around. But then when it comes down to it, when you look even closer, this is why it's so important to keep a food journal if you are struggling with anything like this, because that's really the only way. No one is inside of your body except for you. So even if you have a coach or a doctor or nutritionist, like, they don't know how you're responding to food like you do. So just tracking what you're eating and how you feel after, how you felt before, how your skin looks before and after, is really, really key and really helpful. But yeah, so I had to I had to do that. I had to look at everything that I was eating, and because I was eating cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, and it still wasn't helping my skin. And
Interesting. So there are foods that you said, obviously we know that those are generally not good for most people.
Right.
And then there's other foods which, well, presumably, I mean, most people don't know about putting bee pollen in food and stuff like that. Kind of an avocado toast is seen as like a healthy thing, especially, on Ezekiel bread, is you're
Right.
going for very healthy options there. But something about, sorry for a second. Sorry, someone just walked in on a phone call. Um, so those are presumably like very healthy options, but something in there didn't work for you, and you still noticed that you're experiencing symptoms from even eating those kind of foods. I also agree there with the consumption journal. Starting to see the connections between what you're eating and how that shows up in your you know just your everyday energy levels, something we look at in terms of like your gut health or your eliminative health, and really important for actually being able to identify those things, because like you said, even if you go and see a practitioner or a doctor or anyone outside of you, they're still having to interpret you and your experiences to be able to make any sort of diagnosis or give any sort of prescription.
Yeah.
So what did you feel shifted you into a better change or better health?
It really happened. I feel like it was forced. Like, I mean, part of me was searching for it, but not consciously. I just, my skin was so bad. I stopped doing anything social, and I just spent a lot of time going inward. And I would journal, I would make gratitude lists, and I would just do visualizations. I would read, I would listen to podcasts, I would research. And it was just a lot of nights like that. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was doing the inner work that needs to be done. Because at the end of the day, the root cause is so deep inside of us. We're all looking out here, but really it starts inside. The outside is just a reflection of the inside. And so as much as I was looking at what I was using topically and what I was eating and all those things, those play a small part, but what you need to do is look all the way inside. And with skin, people will look at your gut health, and I don't think that that's deep enough. So people will look at your liver. That's getting closer, because your liver is going to affect your gut health before your gut health ever affects your liver. So your liver is a step even deeper. But deeper than that is the suppressed and repressed emotions that pile up on top of each other year after year after year, and they start when we're little kids. So a lot of that is removed from our memory. Like, we don't even, when we're younger like that, like, we don't want to remember. So not only do we suppress it, but it's stored way back in our memory that, like, we have to be conscious about bringing those up. And because they'll affect us physically. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, I mean, you probably know this too from the work that you do. It's not just your skin. Like, different emotions will affect you physically in different ways, and you have to release those. And it's not always beautiful when the work is being done, but afterwards, like, that's the real healing, and that's the real freedom and the confidence. Like, that's where it comes from. It's getting rid of all that stuff.
Absolutely. And I think a part of that is almost that the physical symptoms, the things that show up in our life, which causes friction between our outer reality and our internal reality, our outer being and our inner being. Those are the things that are almost like, you know, you go out clubbing when you're younger, you go out socializing, you go out doing all of those things because it's a cultural norm. It's what you do in the culture. In different cultures, they do different things. And there's a lot of, and I think touching on this is there's a lot of externalization that we grow up inheriting, is that we have to look outside of ourselves for everything, give our authority to things outside of ourselves, we give our decisions to things outside of ourselves, we give our choice of who we are and how we are in day to day outside of ourselves. And we are also, kind of interesting with the skin topic, we are currently living in a suit of our ancestors.
Yeah.
And so we've inherited this stuff, and then we've also been conditioned in the external world that we're in. And as we are having these experiences of symptoms showing up, or some sort of physical health thing or a mental health thing, this is really actually, the resistance is looking at what it is, or not knowing how to look at what it is, or feeling like you have to keep externalizing yourself to, be a part of the outside world. Of course, there is an element of that. Just to contextualize this, I went through at university a lot of mental health stuff going on, anxiety, depression, these kind of things, because one, I had a whole load of childhood trauma. I also had a lifestyle which was not actually connected to nature, and not doing the things which the body needs in order to then be able to do what the mind wants. And the environment that I was in was one environment where it's a case of like, you have to go to the library and study for 12 hours every day in the artificial lights, and then having to just eat food that's at the shop, or live in basically a chronic stress environment over a lot of time. And if you go and see the doctor in a Western country, they go, oh, don't ask you anything about your mindset. They don't ask you anything about your lifestyle. They don't ask you anything about your history, like actual emotional history. They're just like, oh, yeah, you should take this pill that will mask the symptom. And I think this is essentially like the topical approach, right, where it's mask the symptom and then come back when it gets worse, and or something else pops up, and we'll give you a different type of pill. And it's kind of like this big pharma corporate, or is it Ferris wheel, where you're going round and round on this wheel, and it's not really getting to the root cause of what needs to be done in order to be able to actually heal those things. And it's interesting that you've said this, because obviously, like, the gut is like the inside of the tube, where the skin is the outside of the tube. And then we kind of have like our holes at either end, which are the entry and exit points of stuff. So a lot of people look to mask the symptoms outside by, change something, or it's this thing or that thing, not realizing that their gut health is impacting their actual skin. And it's just like it's like you said, it's like the skin is a reflection of what's going on within. And then you kind of start looking at that and you go, oh, well, okay, I'm going to change my diet. And as you start changing your diet, then you're like, oh, emotions popping up. Oh, I could eat that thing, or I could eat that thing. And then you start realizing, oh, eating those foods was something that I did, not just mindlessly, but in a way to be able to actually deal with the emotions that pop up, which is almost like a way of distracting oneself. And then you start leaning into the emotions, and it opens up a whole different box there, right?
And the foods actually feed those emotions, and they're dying. They're being let go of, which is why they're hungry. They're starving. They're trying to hold on. So there's like this point, because of course we all get cravings and things. But if you can push past that, like the cravings are a great sign that you're on the right path, and you're letting go of these things that no longer serve you and that are actually causing you harm. You said so much gold in there too, because
write down what you just said.
The pill thing, it's like so prevalent in the skincare industry, because I mean, that's the way that doctors and dermatologists were trained, and so they're doing the work that they were trained to do, which is give a pill for the symptom. Like, that's the problem, here's a solution for that problem, but not actually to heal. Because if you heal, then, like you're talking about, like big pharma, like you're no longer in the system. They're not capitalizing off of you anymore. So you're useless to them if you don't need another pill, or at least to stay on the same pill. Which is why Accutane, one of the biggest pills known for acne, people have to go on it several times. Yet it's supposed to be this one fix, like cure all, but there's over 50% of people need to go on it more than once. So, and it'll often be years later. So they'll take it for 6 months, and then 3, 5, 10 years later, they're on it again. And in between that time, they were struggling with breakouts, like up and down. So it's like, that's not actually healing it, and it causes more problems. So like you said, like the pills, like they always cause more problems, more symptoms. So what happens is then the people with acne, they end up getting eczema later on, or they get really oily skin or really dry skin, or they have different issues with their liver. You're having to get your blood tested every month because the pill is so severe. And that's another thing, is with so many of these pharmaceuticals, is you have to get so much blood work done. Like we're being studied, you know, we're just like the test subjects. Like, let's give them this, and then let's test and see what happens to them. Like, it's not natural, it's not safe in my eyes. And but as humans, because of the vanity aspect and like the socializing and the wanting to appear like we're attractive, then we want to reach for that pill, for that quick fix, something that will take away, you know, that pain. However, this is a big part of it too, going back to regulating the nervous system. If we're in a social situation and we're uncomfortable with the way we look, we don't feel safe or good in our own skin and our own body, then our nervous system is not regulated. We don't feel safe. So our bodies can't heal when they feel like that. You're either in rest and digest, or fight or flight, and you can't be both at the same time. So if you need to do certain things to go out in the world to feel better and feel good in your body, like if you do want to wear some makeup, or you want to do your hair, or you want to dress a certain way, like that's great. If that keeps your nervous system regulated and you're not worried about like being judged or looked at, that's wonderful. But at the same time, you want to make sure you don't put yourself in those situations where you know you're not going to be comfortable, especially if you're healing, because you won't be able to heal.
Absolutely. Really nicely said. And I think it really encapsulates almost, you know, you probably know the term FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
It's like there's this deep monkey nature in humans to be around people and you know, to go and be around people, even if you're doing things that, you know, like drinking at university and stuff like that. I had to stop doing it because I would never actually see people and be with people outside of drinking, because that's all the culture was. You were either drinking, you're in the library, or you're playing sports or something like that, or you're at home. And this was a really like big thing that changed the way I approached everything personally. Was coming home from university, I realized that a lot of my friends at home, I would only actually get to see them if I was like, hey, do you want to go for a walk? And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? And then it comes to the day, like, yeah, actually we're going to the pub instead. And I was just like, oh, the pub. Oh, okay, yeah, let's do that then. And you go and you sit there, and one person's staring at the TV, the other one's just on their phone. And I was like, oh, rep. And just like, then the next week, the same thing happens. And the realization that I had was, if the only time I get to see people is when I'm in environments that stop me from actually, that I'm having to adjust myself to be in at a way that I can feel is negatively impacting me from day to day, from week to week, and in life in general, that it simply wasn't worth it. But there is this pain in the transitionary period where we are having to choose to do something different, which is, again, it comes back to like energy, but we're having to choose to do something different, and then we're actually having to actually implement that, and then start doing new things independently. And this can be scary. It can be overwhelming, and it can be something which leaves you feeling isolated. And like you said, like going through those experiences, it sounds like we've had like similar experiences there. You know, you spend a lot of time going inwards and a lot of time by yourself. But that's how you kind of like, you have to go through it to get through it. And on the other side of that is actually you heal the parts of yourself that are magnetizing in a reality of people around you that reflect those unhealed parts of yourself. And it's only through acknowledging that you actually have those, that you have a cognitive dissonance to your experiences, like your experiences aren't fulfilling you, and then actually starting to look inside at what those experiences, what the outcome of those experiences are. So high stress environments, not late sleeping, junk food diets and stuff like this, goes a lot with the going out type of culture, and starting to change those things, that you actually start to then understand that there was a subconscious behavior or a belief that you've learned or inherited, which has essentially driven that decision-making process. And that when we start to connect into that decision-making process, which is just, again, comes back to energy, it actually starts to transform our whole life. So these symptoms, which we can go through like a traditional approach of like mask the symptom, take the pill, have the thing still needs to happen that the pill is masking, so it comes out in all these different ways. But if we follow that, taking the pill and masking things, we never actually get into this stuff that needs to change at a deep level for our whole life to change.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. And hold on, that just like clicked in my brain. So when you are masking these symptoms, you're keeping yourself at this level of vibration that you're stopping the laws of the universe. Basically, you're supposed to evolve as a human, as a species. You're supposed to grow, you're supposed to evolve, you're supposed to expand, and you're limiting yourself and you're keeping yourself at this lower level that you're not meant to be at anymore. And that's why it gets so painful. And that's why when you do heal, and on the other side of that pain is the freedom, like you're saying, because you're finally letting yourself elevate and step into that new version of you. And the reason why it's so difficult for a lot of people is because you don't know what's on the other side. I mean, it was difficult for me, I'm sure for you too. Like there's that period where it's just like, who am I? Like, if I'm not this person anymore, if I don't do these things anymore, then what am I gonna do? Who am I? Like who do I spend time with? Like, what do I enjoy? Like, what does my life look like? If it doesn't look like this, I've lived my whole life this way. And so,
And you used exactly the right word when you started talking then, masking. And that you were going, having a moment there, and I was going, hang on, that's the word you just said. I'm just having, you're masking yourself from yourself when you mask those symptoms.
yes, yes. And you're wearing a mask
It's
because you're
almost
not
like,
that person.
say,
Go ahead.
you're not that person. You just said that. You're not that. If you mask the things to try and continue being a part of this external reality, you're masking the things that are you and how your body is actually responding to this external reality. And if you don't, you can ignore those things, but you can't change how your body is responding to that external reality, right?
Right. So it's still happening underneath, and it's going to show up in more and more ways until you can't take it anymore. So it's like, I heard the other day that the universe will send you a sign. If you don't listen, it will send you a boulder. Like, it basically gets bigger and bigger until like you cannot ignore it anymore. And if you just make the move, like you kind of get good at it after a while. You're like, okay, I'm going to pay attention at the first sign instead of waiting for it to be this giant lesson that you have to repeat. So if you just move when the pain just starts instead of waiting for it to be so severe you have no choice, then you're going to be way better off. I think that's how a lot of people end up in hospitals or, running to a 24-hour clinic, because they don't pay attention. They don't listen to their bodies, which is easy to understand because we are bombarded with distraction. So I definitely give people the benefit of the doubt. But it's so important to learn how to tune into your body.
Absolutely. I think we need to, it's one of the things I actually had an idea for doing content about this in the gym earlier, where it's doing a pros and cons list, because it's almost like you can't tell people stuff. You have to ask them a question and then they know it inside. But it's essentially working with a client who's gone and seen doctors, and they've had some pain going on. And the doctors said, take this really strong painkiller multiple times a day, every day, just in case the pain pops up once that week. And this person's going through pain, and they want to not be having that experience. And so we did like a pros and cons list, and it's almost like, all right, well, what's the pro of taking painkiller? Well, you can't feel the pain. All right. And let's just check the cons list. Can't feel the pain. That's a pro. And because this person's holistically minded, they go, yeah, actually, that's a con as well. Like, I can't feel the pain, but simultaneously, I can't feel the pain. And we can't live with that mask our whole life. And it's almost like that mask is our outer being. It's the way we want to be perceived, or the person that we behave like in order to fit in order to belong, to be accepted. A very deep human need. But essentially it can, because that deep human need is so visceral to us, it can really, that the level of depth is almost like the level of intensity where that emotional need, if it's not met, can cause that level of compensation in people's life in order to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted. And that is almost what makes it harder to be creating these type of changes, like we've been talking about. It can be very difficult to be doing this by yourself, and an element of this work does need to be by yourself, because that's when you actually get to connect in and self-discover. But I think we both know that the community is such a powerful tool in that, because you do need to have that time by yourself. But it's really having if the community was different that you grew up in, then the conditions and the symptoms would be different that you live with. And in order to make that transition from dealing with symptoms of living in a way that's not resonating with your inner being, it's actually incredibly helpful to one, like, have a coach, to have a mentor, and to be doing that in a community space where it's normalized. You do fit in, you do belong, because everyone else is on a similar journey.
Yeah. And like, what got you here won't get you there. And another thing with the pain pill, covering up the pain, I like to think of it as like a car. I always talk about like the skin being like the check engine light. So like, yeah, if you're feeling pain, you need to know, because again, that's like a message. That's something your body is just talking to you. So it's like putting a sticker over like your gas light. Like, you need to go get gas, but you're just gonna ignore it, and like, no, you're gonna run out of gas and end up on the side of the road. Like, you have to listen to your body and act accordingly.
Absolutely. It's almost like, and you can take this as a very a sort of general parallel to that, is that inflammation is, I don't want to say the root cause, because that is commonly said, like inflammation is the root cause of any disease, but inflammation that's a really good example, is that red flashing light. Right? The inflammation the redness, the swelling, it is your body going, it's not doing anything it's not already doing. It's like we experience, if I'm holding this pen and I touch it, it's not painful, but if I squeeze it really hard, then it is painful. So the pain's only popping up as like a natural thing that our body does in order to make us aware, or in order to change our behaviors to prevent further damage. And I think a lot of the time we can be so conditioned into living certain ways that it's this, going back to this idea of masking ourselves, that I think this just happens in like the early years of our life, you know, like you don't really know who you are when you're going to school. You're a part of the whole group. And then it's once you go into like your late teens, your early 20s, you're moving into like 30, that you actually start to be, there's less of that group around, and you really actually start to go into that process of self-discovery, self-actualization. And I think one of the biggest challenges that people face along that, we teach something called the 7 stages of disease, where the first stage is an enervation or a lack of energy, which then leads to a second stage, which is toxemia, which is a buildup of toxins, which then shows up as irritation, which is subclinical inflammation, meaning you go see the doctor, they send you home, come back when it gets worse, like there's the flashing light. Now you go back again and it's stage 4 inflammation, and it's itis. So this itis, that itis just means Latin for like fire, basically. So inflammation, and by the time that happens, now it's something that's diagnosable. But because we are in this system where, you know, if something's going on, we aren't taught at school how to be able to actually look after ourselves. We're taught to be, it's an industrial schooling system. We're taught to be almost like robots in the system, rather than actual humans, individuals, which are needing to understand themselves so that they can navigate their life experiences. And I think that this idea of being able to take pills to mask symptoms is, it's sold to us, it's conditioned into us, but it's having those kind of pivotal experiences where you try all the external stuff and it's not changing, and you're having to actually come back within yourself in order to be able to change that. Something you said earlier, which when you start saying it, my brain automatically went to this idea of cravings. Yes. I was in my head, I was like, yes, she's going to talk about cravings. Cool, we'll talk about this. And I was going like, you know, I said this to someone earlier, just because you're craving something sweet, it doesn't mean that you actually want the thing that you're craving. So you might be craving like a chocolate bar for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as, you know, the cravings indicating that your body's looking for magnesium.
Right.
But actually what you said there about the cravings are a sign of growth. Could you just expand on that a second again? The craving happens when?
Yeah, okay. So there's a couple different reasons why we get cravings. Is one is like you're saying, there's a particular nutrient in that food that our body needs, and so we intuitively crave that food. A lot of people will crave fish when they need omega-3s, things like that. Another part though, like if let's say someone is craving chocolate and they take some magnesium and they're still craving chocolate. Okay, let's look at your childhood. When you were upset, what did your parents give you, or your caregiver? Was it chocolate ice cream? Was it a piece of chocolate? Or was it, you know, did it have chocolate? Because that is going to tell you, okay, how are you feeling right now? Are you feeling the way that you felt then when you would receive the chocolate? And 9 times out of 10, like that's the link. So that's why a lot of the foods that people crave are these foods that we ate when we were younger. Things like mac and cheese and ice cream and pizza, and these foods that are made popular because that's another thing. It's like, why are these foods so easy to find and so popular, especially like in America? Because they keep feeding that feeling, that emotion, which keeps it buried, which makes these physical symptoms come up, which makes us go seek out a pill. So it's like this endless cycle. But if we can get past the craving and release we have to look at it first. Once you become aware of it, then you know, it makes it so much easier, because when you're craving the food, you disconnect yourself from it. It's not like this like addiction, like, oh, I have to have this, like I'm craving and I have to have it. Like, you know, okay, I'm craving this because I'm feeling this way, but this feeling isn't going to last forever. Feelings are just visitors. So once this feeling subsides, the craving will also go. And after feeling this and going through this several times, sometimes it'll take, you know, a week or a month. You can't really put a time on it, because I don't know how many times you're going to feel that way, that you link that feeling to that food. But it will depend on your history and, you know, your childhood and your emotions. But ultimately, you will get to the point where you no longer crave that food. And that's the freedom, like that's the, like, you no longer crave foods. And you know that if you do crave something, you know it's a healthy craving now. Like, you're craving something sweet, like you're craving some fruit, okay, your body needs some glucose. And yeah, it's just so great when you get to that point, and when you also know that. Because another layer of that, just to look at it on a more 3D body level, is we have different pathogens and bacteria in our bodies. So some of these we don't want in our bodies, some of them are healthy, and some of them, they feed on these foods too. And they're linked to these emotions. So you're starving these pathogens. So when I say like you're starving the emotions, you're actually also physically starving these pathogens in your body that will die off as you resist these cravings.
So, I want to touch on physical and emotional hunger in a second, because you just brought that up. This is one of the most mind-blowing things that people don't understand. Is it's like, hi Jessica, hi Teamo, you're this character, you're this avatar. But did you know that you're actually more other cells than you are human cells? And that those cells, like you're just saying, things like, people will be more familiar with this one, is like candida, something which thrives on sugar. It's needed at a certain level, but that it's almost like, yeah, the microbiome in your gut will contribute to the actual behaviors that you see, because they're going to be sending emotional signals, or influencing the way that emotions are driving behaviors. And that is so, 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 so profound, because it's just like, I see a lot in the gym environment. People will be forcing themselves to eat lots of foods, or eating foods which are, either simple, consistent things like eating lots of rice, or eating lots of pasta, or they'll do things like having a Rice Krispies sugar bar before you go to the gym, because sugar for the pump. And it'll do things such as boosting their candida, which will kind of drive the neurotic behavior and the sort of emotional things which cause people to be more fixated on comparisons and basically behaviors that drive the emotional spiral. And it would also do things like then affecting their gut health, which would then affect things like the skin. And these kind of behaviors are almost, we think of it as like, it's just a bit of sugar. And it is just a bit of sugar. But depending on the individual and their current internal climate and their emotional tendencies and behaviors from the past, that could actually be something that triggers a behavior that causes a whole cascade of different changes inside that individual. Really powerful, that actually recognizing that within people, because that changes the whole way that we look at the foods that we eat. And when you're saying there, it's kind of like you're starving out the bacteria. That is almost, it is what you're saying. It's changing that, but along the way, that craving gets stronger, because it's almost like when you've been running before and then you get really thirsty and then you need a drink, you crave that thing more. And or like when you need the toilet. Like, there is nothing more important in the world when you need to pee, right? All of a sudden, everything goes like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can almost imagine that people's lifestyles, especially if they're chronically stressed, and that's causing them to live in a subconscious autopilot of behaviors, that as soon as they have those kind of stimulations for their food, those kind of cravings are really going to be something which can help someone either move towards a better reality of life, or can stay stuck in that same reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you keep feeding those emotions, think of another thing. If you keep feeding it, what does it do? It grows, it gets bigger, it takes over more. So if you don't want to feel sad anymore, and when you were younger you ate mac and cheese when you were sad, so now you always reach for it, well, you're going to be more sad if you continue reaching for it whenever you're sad. It just, it piles up on top of each other, and you have to at some point look at it, like you're saying.
And I think this really connects into the mental health aspect of things, where neurons that fire together wire together, and it creates these pathways and associations. So if you think of a person, you will also think of places, or if you think of that place, you'll think of that person. And it's those connections between those, childhood foods or comfort foods, really do, it's comforting to the nervous system. But what we're needing to do is actually learn other ways to be able to comfort our nervous system that almost isn't a compensatory behavior. So it's not that you can't enjoy a certain type of food if you want to eat it. It's that if you want to grow and to experience a better version of self and a better version of life, that you can't be reliant on using those things, and that actually understanding how those things are influencing you will help you to be stepping into a reality where you aren't reliant on those external things, because you have those internal resources in order to be able to navigate your experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to be able to decipher between your mind, like an addiction, a craving, and what your body needs versus what your body wants. So yeah, you really need to be able to tune in to all of that.
And this is especially working. I'd just like to say before I go into this, there's a lovely lady called Rubio in the comments, and she just said that she really resonates with what you've been talking about here, and I thought you might just want to check that out while we're still online.
Aw, thank you, Rubio. I don't see the comments for some reason. I don't have any.
Okay. Well, in that case, Rubio, what I'll say is I'll just read it out for a second. She's just saying so much yes. She took the Accutane as well. I asked her how did that go, and she said she had to do 3 treatments a few times, and it would help for a short amount of time, but then it would come back. And I said, where are you at in that process? And she said, I'm still learning, to be honest. I definitely let go surrounding myself from party people and learn to listen to what I'm actually feeling instead of shoving it down. So important.
Yeah, you're on the path to healing. Feel free to send me a message too. I can't see, I don't know why it's not showing up for me, but yeah, send me a message.
And if that was the thing, physical and emotional hunger, especially in the body transformation, in terms of physical body transformation. She said thank you so much. In terms of like physical transformations, this is something that is really present in terms of helping people to navigate through their food cravings and dietary choices and stuff like that. And I've got this little chart which is really helpful, and it just makes it's almost like you can see these different characters inside of yourself, and it's not until you kind of contextualize it that it kind of makes it easier to be able to interpret that kind of stuff. So say, for example, it's the signs and symptoms of physical hunger and emotional hunger.
Mm-hmm.
And say, for example, physical hunger would be like, "Ooh, Jess, I'm a little bit hungry." Hour passes by. "Jess, I'm a little bit more hungry." It's like, "Sam, what could you eat?" I'm like, "Most things." So emotional hunger would be like, "Jess, I'm hungry now. I want ice cream now."
That's a
Right?
good way to look at it.
So these things kind of show up in these different ways, but it's kind of interpreting that, and it's really, it's what you said earlier about being able to observe those things happening, but to not get caught up in that process as such.
Mm-hmm.
What has really allowed you to be able to find to be able to, so it's a quote I said before the other day by Viktor Frankl, that between stimuli and response there is a space, and in that space is our freedom and our power to be able to create change. A lot of people live in a state of stress and reactivity, and are living out, because they're living in that chronic state of stress, they're living out those subconscious patterns, and when something stressful pops up, it just kind of pushes them further into that. So that space between stimulus and response almost is like here, and it's just stimulus reaction, stimulus reaction. What's really allowed you to be able to cultivate that space so that you can make more conscious and intentional decisions?
Yeah, by doing it the wrong way, by not having any space. So I tend to learn things through experience through my life, and I spent a lot of time in reactive mode until I had enough and I didn't like my life anymore. And I had a lot of spiritual teachers, I did a lot of reading, and I just learned that you don't have to react, and that there's a difference between reacting and responding. And I mean, for a lot of people, a good place to start is just counting. So if you feel anger or frustration, usually those are the ones that come up first and strongest that you want to react. But if you're able to just, there's like a split second that happens in between the feeling of that and the reacting. If you can grab that tiny little space and hold on to it for just a few seconds, you get better at it, and you can do it for longer and longer over time. And then you can recognize, like, okay, I am not this feeling, I am experiencing this feeling. And I think it just happens with practice, just like with anything. Like, once you do it enough times, it becomes part of who you are, and you're able to step back from it and realize you are light, like you are source, you are just having this experience here on earth, on this planet, in this lifetime, and everything else is just for you to have a better experience and to have a more like intertwined or like submerged into the experience. But if you just keep your mind separate from everything around you, then you're able to just like have this space, and it's like having this peace, like knowing that like you are not your clothes, you are not your body, you are not these emotions, you are not these cravings, like you are not these physical symptoms, like that's not you. Like all of those things are temporary.
Very cool. So living in a place of non-attachment.
Yeah.
And while you're saying that, I'm visualizing, like, I said earlier about how the emotions can cause a reaction, and the reaction causes you to kind of spiral downwards. And as you're saying that, I'm literally visualizing like walking back up the spiral, and then actually starting to have all these realizations of you aren't your thoughts, you aren't your emotions, you aren't your temporary current external circumstances, and that the more attached you are to the perceptions of those things, the more fixated you become, and the more your reality becomes that experience, right? And that as you're able to actually, it's what you're saying is mindfulness is like a muscle. And as you actually you exercise that and you are practicing that skill, you become better at that skill. And this is something I always kind of feel in meditation, is that when you are meditating, a lot of people, it's common perception with people is, oh, I'm no good at meditating. It's like, why is that? Because I just kept getting distracted. It's like, how do you define meditation?
Mm.
Well, you have to sit quiet. And that just means is if you have any other experience as a human, having any experience, if it's not like that, that you're doing wrong. And it's a beautiful shift seeing that there is this idea of meditation being becoming familiar with. So you sit and you meditate, and then something pops into your head, and you go, "Oh, I can't change it, but I'm trying to meditate, and I can't change that thing. Oh, I'm no good at meditating. Stop." And I had a client before saying, "Meditation's not working today." Tried it the first time, really liked it. Tried meditation again, later stage, and it's not working today. So why is that? So my mind was just so busy, I couldn't meditate. I was like, it's becoming familiar with. You're noticing what's already there, and it's only through being familiar with that we're taking off that mask, and then actually being able to essentially come to acceptance with what is there. And it's that process of acknowledging it, accepting it, that almost allows it to resolve itself. Kind of like what you're saying about with cravings. Like if you have a craving and it's there and it's present, you can't ignore that the craving's there. You have to acknowledge it. It's healthy to acknowledge it, but you don't need to act on it.
Right. Yeah.
It's saying 25 minutes, so I think 20 seconds remaining. So I think it's about to finish the live in a second.
Okay.
We've been on here for an hour.
Time flies.
Yeah. So just finishing up, it was really lovely to connect.
That concludes this episode. If this resonated with you, please give it a rating and review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. Links are in the show notes. I sincerely thank you for your time and your presence.